It's super expensive and time consuming to build regulated products. I know, I just helped build one. My software team was part of building this medical device. It took us 8 years to get it built and then get it ready for FDA. With Onstra, we could have saved 2 years and $10 million. Why is it so expensive? You are manually writing a huge pile of documentation to demonstrate that you've done a good job. You're also hiring writers to polish that before you submit it to the FDA. And you have to hire a team of regulatory experts to guide your team and train them. All this adds up to years of time and a lot of needless expense. So we help by largely automating the documentation and the generation of that and guiding the team through the process. So you don't need to hire as many experts. This can speed you up by 25%. You don't have to just believe us. Everyone we've talked to so far agrees this is a real pain, a huge opportunity to speed up and save cost. Of the people we talked to, 3 of them were so excited they wanted to partner with us, and we started to negotiate that. And one of them is already close to terms. But first, going deeper into the pain that they're experiencing, let me describe the workflow from my experience. So you have a regulatory team. They have to train everyone, in our case, over 100 people on this flow and the process. A lot of this has to do with hazards, patient hazards. How do you think about this for your product? How do you design your product to avoid those hazards? How do you test the product to make sure you don't bring those to a patient? All of that results in specific documentation that you need to prepare in the form that the FDA likes. And that's how you get to thousands of pages of evidence. And as you can imagine, this can be a ton of meetings and a ton of emails and a lot of work to put this together.
Okay. As a software engineer who's working on this kind of software, I hate meetings, and all I want to do is write the code and ship it. And this is exactly what the companies do, except they can't just ship it. The FDA requires a ton of documentation. So 2 of the companies that we talked to actually had to stop all feature work and production work and spend 3 to 4 months just writing all of the documentation that they should have been collecting and writing from the start. For me, that's a nightmare job scenario. So how does Onstra fix this problem? Essentially, it takes this manual workflow of regulators looking over your shoulder, manually setting up meetings, and digitizes it. And it effectively teaches you to be a better software engineer in my case, but a better engineer overall. It uses AI to coach you through the design pieces, think about the hazards, generates test cases for you. So when you write the code, you can meet those standards, and then generates the documentation for you. Let's take a closer look at these. Okay, so there's a lot of text here, but let me walk you through what's happening. So the engineer gets this task. It's a feature that they need to implement. So they start writing out what they need to do to implement it. And then Onstra coaches them to think about the hazards and the mitigations that they need to put in place while planning this feature out. It can also auto-populate some of this so that the engineer gets that support without having to do a lot of the heavy lifting themselves. You can save this to Jira or any other ticketing system or any other documentation system that you need to save it to. Okay, next, Onstra takes that design spec that you just created and generates the tests for you. Now, when you write the code, you can always make sure that you're not going outside of the thresholds that you've already set up. So now the engineer goes and writes the code, comes back, and Onstra now takes all of those pieces, the design specs, the tests, the code you just wrote, and any other existing documentation, and generates the new documentation for you on those code changes. It does it in the language that the FDA needs and in the context that it cares about. The regulatory team or the engineer can go over the proposed changes and can edit them, discard those changes, or accept them. Okay, so how are we taking this to market? We're going to start with CLIA Labs. And the reason for this is that we have a big regulatory tailwind helping us out here. CLIA labs produce really important tests like prenatal screening and cancer diagnostic tests. And up until now, the FDA has not regulated these. But this April, 16,000 CLIA labs over the country are going to have to start to produce thousands of pages of documentation to get FDA approved. So this is a big market with a clear need, and we can help them immediately. Next, we're going to target all of US biotech. As phase 3, we'll target worldwide biotech. And for the US, we'll move into other regulated industries and government contracting. And in the future, we anticipate being able to go into worldwide regulated industries, worldwide government contracting, and outsource contracting. Okay, so why would Onstra win? As you heard before, regulated documentation is really difficult to create. You need to, and it's very unique in its nature. You need to track patient hazards all the way from the beginning and track how it's changing through the design steps to the testing steps and collect evidence at each of those stages. So you really need deep expertise in order to do this. Competitors like Enviate are working on better software engineering workflows, but they're doing it broadly. And that's why we're the right team to do this. David brings deep expertise in biotech, medical device manufacturing, and software engineering.
And Kajri's passionate about engineering workflows and has a lot of expertise in development tools and data integration, which is exactly what we need for this product. And Stuart, who's not here, is another biotech and medical device veteran, but crucially an AI expert. So our ask, especially interested in any introductions to CLIA labs that you might have connections to. And we'd love to talk more if you'd like. You can reach us at info@Onstra.ai and love to accelerate FDA approvals together.
So any questions in the room for the team? Yeah.
So for the why is that number calculated as the amount of
Yeah. So question about the TAM slide, is that related to, total amount of spend doing this regulatory work or something else? For us, we were trying to calculate that bottom up and top down, what we think was possible to charge people for this type of product. And we're shooting at, trying to only charge them at 1/10 of what their spend was. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gonna feel this or? So the question is, you're preparing all this documentation for a regulator. There's a risk because you could get it wrong. And it's a significant risk, right? Because you don't know how they're going to respond, the auditor, who you're going to get. It could add a lot of time and expense if they push you out. In our opinion, the regulatory team that you hire is really responsible for how you're preparing this documentation. So part of the product is very much about allowing them to customize it, customize the outputs and the template that they want, customize the workflow and the things that they're asking the team to develop and questions that they want answered. So it really is the accountability of that team to decide how we're going to prepare the submission, and in their experience, because they're all very experienced people, what the FDA is going to be okay with. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're not suggesting that there are no regulatory humans in this workflow anymore. Like what we're doing is we're speeding it up for the software engineers who are writing this documentation, but it's still going to eventually go to the regulatory team to approve before you submit it to the FDA.
Yeah, and even the engineer too, right? I mean, we've designed this such that it's an assist. It's doing most of the heavy lifting for you, but every change is approved and reviewed by the team. Mhm. So question is, has this help or relate to FDA pre-submissions? Yeah, I wasn't expecting us that, that we would, like if a team has an interesting new technical innovation and they want to ask FDA, is this going to be okay? Or, if we spend 3 years and a ton of money developing this product, are you going to be okay with it? At least my sense of it is that the pre-submission is very early on. And when you have something new and innovative, we're really focusing here on, how do you get all the way to the submission, most likely after you've done that kind of checking with them. Yeah, I mean, we've definitely thought about like, can we help with the hazard analysis and the requirements generation around the hazards? At least my understanding of a lot of pre-submissions is like you have a brand new something they've never seen before. You really have to think ahead and make sure that they're going to be okay with it. Mhm.
Sounds like a lot of people like from the legislative team, so that they have to hear. So how are you guys thinking about
Mhm. Want to talk about the workflow customization or fine-tuning? Okay. Yeah. So question is, how do you make sure that what you're producing, the documentation, really meets the regulatory team's needs? Is that right? Okay. Yeah, I think there's a few different approaches here. One is just giving them the tools to customize what questions are being asked and prompts for the team during design, but then really both templating the output and giving them options like fine-tuning the models on their regulatory documents they already have, so it has the right language and the way that they want to talk about it, and things like that. But love to explore more with these partners on, how they want to see it. Yeah, great question. Restating it is, is this more helpful when you're getting to or beginning a product, getting to FDA approval, than say, in the middle of it or after acceptance and when you're on market? Yeah, more useful very at the beginning when you're first designing. And that was my assumption at first when we started talking to customers, that this would really help with the initial lift. Or most often you build a research product and then you're hoping, can we get this to clinical, and you have no documentation. But I was surprised to find from talking to people that even after all the way through FDA, but then even after FDA, the burden is about the same. All of the updates that you're doing and then giving FDA information about what changes you're making is roughly as burdensome. So even on market, this is going to add a lot of value for them.
Okay, let's thank our team.